Welcome everyone to another installment of the Show Will Go On Business Survival Series. This is an Intentional Success webinar, and I am your host, Tom Stimson. Thank you for joining me. Before I get into all of this stuff, I have to do a big shout out thanks to everyone who has, one, supported this, but two, all the notes I've gotten, emails, text messages, phone messages, expressing thanks and support for doing all of this, and it's very much appreciated. It makes it worthwhile. I mean, I would do it anyway, but trust me, hearing from you guys means a lot to me, and thank you very much for that. So for those of you who are new to me and to this, because we have lots of new registrants and first-timers here today, I am Tom Stimson, president of the Stimson Group. I am a business consultant that works exclusively in the professional audiovisual and live events industry. I've been in this business for 35 years. I've been consultant for almost 15 of it. I've been writing and teaching to the industry since, well, early 2000, 2001 time. So this is my space. This is what I talk about. And right now it's very much needed. So I don't have all the answers that you need. I'll tell you when I don't know the answers to your questions. But when it comes to business and business responses and how you handle your business and dealing with a crisis of this magnitude, I will give you the best advice that I have, same advice I would give to any one of my clients. So thank you for joining us. Little change for this webinar. I've been in talks for weeks now with AVIXA, trying to, which is the trade association for the professional audiovisual industry, trying to figure out how we can get ahead of all of this and help our constituents, help our people who are going to be affected by this. You know, obviously live events is like the leading indicator of things like this. We're the first to go. We are much more adversely affected than probably any other industry right now. Others are catching up. We're not going to be alone here for long, but unfortunately we're 2, 3, or 4 weeks ahead of a lot of our peers out there in the real world. So this is very timely information, and AVIXA is there to help us. So I invite you, go to avixa.org. They are offering all their online training for free until June 12th. All you need to do is sign up for a free basic membership, which is an individual membership, and let you stay up to the minute with the changes in the Pro AV industry. This is not a company membership. Everybody in your company can do this. Share this with your employees, share this with your past employees, anybody that you know. Take advantage of this. It's a very generous offer, and it will help us all stay connected and support the industry. There are community discussions or virtual roundtables. There's all sorts of idea sharing and stuff there within the AVIXA community that you can do that. Work with them. So please, thank you, AVIXA, for helping make this all possible and for supporting us in this time of need. Now, where are we? Well, let's kind of recap last week's webinar. I know most of you were there. You'd probably like to forget about it because it wasn't everything that you wanted to hear, but it was a lot of things you needed to hear. I just say to you right now, just remember, no matter what you're going through, this really has happened to you. Okay? No one and no words can change the fact that this is happening to you. And all that really matters is what you do about it. And this is one of my tenets. We can do something. That's what crisis is about. That's what we do in a crisis, is we do something. We're show people. The show will go on. We're going to do something. If something fails, we're going to do something about it. And here we are with our businesses, which is generally, for most of us, not our first discipline. You know, we didn't grow up being business people. We grew up being show people. Running businesses is not always second nature to us. So we need to work on those things here today. Oh, while I'm thinking about it, questions. Feel free to post questions, anything that you want to make sure that I talk about. Use the Q&A box. The chat box, I can't keep up with the chat box during the event, but you can certainly chat to each other. Select to speak to all participants instead of just all panelists, and you can do a shout out to everybody from wherever you're at. It's a nice community we have here. We are we're up to 350 folks right now, so you have a lot of brethren on the call right now. So last webinar, I told you to plan on no revenue through August. The good news is I'm not changing that. I'm not making it farther out. I'm still comfortable with that right now. The indicators we have said that that's a fairly safe amount of time to see things start to come back. I thought about taking the cancellation of the Olympics into account of pushing that or the rebirth back a little bit farther, but we also take in mind that a lot of the Olympics cancellation has to do with the different timings of all the participants and the fact that most of them can't train right now. So I think Japan made a really good choice in canceling that event or postponing it until next year. And I think we're okay planning through August, but pay attention. This could change. This could push farther out, but it's okay. We're going to have the tools to deal with it. The reason I want to pick this really difficult date and put that out there is because you need to make the hard decisions now rather than later. A decision to downsize now rather than 2-3 weeks from now or 2 or 3 months from now is much, much more valuable for prolonging your business. And we'll look at that as we talk about cash flow today. Furloughs, we told people to do furloughs if you can, allows people to keep on their benefits. If you have health care in the US, please furlough your employees so they can stay on that health care as long as possible. And flattening the curve. We've all heard of flattening the curve when it comes to the coronavirus. Getting control of your finances, getting control of your cash is how you will flatten the curve for your business so that you can spread this out a little bit farther along. I also talked about acknowledging your grief. Remember the phases of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. I talked about that in terms of, since many of us are travelers, getting on an airplane and understanding the phases of going through an airplane. Our goal is to get everybody to airplane mode. I want everybody settled in their seat, shut down to airplane mode, and be ready for landing. So we've got to get to that point where we're running on minimal resources and being ready to start back up again. And that's a little bit more of what today we're going to talk about. And then last thing from last week, isolation. Prepare for at least 8 weeks of isolation. Not all communities have gotten this through their heads yet. It's coming. And really, it's not until all of us are isolated for 8 weeks. So those of us who've been isolated longer might see a longer period of time. We've got to get isolated in order to get ahead of this thing. So get your business in airplane mode, and it's okay to use Wi-Fi on the plane to stay in touch. It doesn't mean you need to shut down. You can stay in touch while we're doing that. Now, let's get into this, how far out you need to plan. So how long can you and will you last? And this is all about cash flow. Any small business person knows that cash is king. Cash flow is a big part of what you manage on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis. This is no different. Just like we do at home, just like, if you're a freelancer, you're all businesses in one way or another. Cash is what allows you to continue to stay afloat. Business management, your home finances, your gig life, all of these have an intersect, which is time, and time is money. The more money that we can hold on to, the longer amount of time we can survive and be ready to go to the future. So I'm going to be focusing a lot on how can we make your cash go farther. This is not hoarding cash. This is looking at the timing of cash and using it wisely. And there's some very simple things very common mistakes that people make in times of a crisis. And there's some non-intuitive things that we're going to do that are going to help you keep your business thriving a little bit longer. Now, the reality of shutting down, and I talked about this last week, is that there are really kind of 3, maybe 4 phases of the layoffs and the downsizing. This is not the ideal way of doing it, but it is human nature. It's like, oh gosh, we need to lay off a few people. Well, let's start with the people that aren't, our best employees. We wouldn't hire them again. Great. All right, well, we need to lay off some people who we now have no work for them to do. Okay. Oh, maybe we need to lay off some. It goes on and on and on. This, I understand why we do this. It is necessary, but it doesn't have to go in big chunks like that. As unfortunate it is for everybody who gets laid off, and I sympathize with all of you in that situation, it is better for the business whose goal is to survive so we can bring people back, to figure out where you need to be and get all of there as quickly as possible. The incremental layoffs are terrifying for folks. It's best for them to know what's going to happen and get that going forward so that you can get into that mode of preparing for the outcome. So, quick exercise. We're going to make some lists. We're going to work on some stuff in a cash flow spreadsheet here. I want you to think about things, and getting your head around cash is a little bit different than thinking about your profit and loss statement. We're not going to make a profit. You're not going to make no one's going to make a profit for the next several months, but we can have cash. What we need to care about right now really is cash. And you can lose money and have cash, and that's what we've got to get our head around here. We also have to understand that loans and credit cards are tools to help you preserve cash. They are, in fact, cash that you have available. So think about potential incoming cash that you may have. In your personal life, you may have a paycheck coming in. You may have unemployment benefits that are coming to you. As a business, you might have receivables. You might have assets you can sell. Heck, I've got a few things for sale. It'd be a great time to have a garage sale if I could have people over to my house. Loans and credit cards are all sources of incoming cash. Okay, there are things that you can delay or cancel. Right, you can call your mortgage company and they'll delay your mortgage. They'll let you defer 3 or 4 or 6 payments and let you go to interest only. Loan payments the same way. You have some payables that you can defer, and we'll talk about those. You have insurance, which was you bought insurance for your company based on your business being a certain size. Guess what? You're not going to be that size for a while. So go back to those insurance companies. Very often they are issuing refunds when they drop your insurance down to the level that you need now. 401k contributions, for those of you that have them and you're making contributions to for your employees, this is the time to stop doing that. If you are an employee and part of your paycheck or your reduced paycheck is going to 401k contributions, stop that. You need the cash. We can get back to making 401k contributions later. I personally have done this. I went through my credit cards and I found 5 subscriptions that I'm paying for every month that I have no use for. One of them was for an Xbox Live subscription that's 5 years old. I haven't turned the Xbox on in 4 years. So look at those things, cancel everything you can. These are all things that you can do that'll positively influence your cash flow. So we're going to look at a spreadsheet here in just a minute, and I'm going to switch screens. Stand by for that, but I'm going to make this point right now. Some of you believe, because you're really good at using QuickBooks and you have a great accounting system and a wonderful bookkeeper, that you can do cash flow management within QuickBooks. You cannot. It is not designed to do that. There's really nothing that's designed to do that other than a spreadsheet or ledgers or other ways, analog solutions for doing this. So don't think the fact that you have a very complete, up-to-date QuickBooks is going to give you the information that you need to have to make the decisions that you should be making right now to protect your cash flow, right? This will become more obvious as I show this to you. So stand by for the demo. I'm going to switch my screens here. And let me share a different screen. Stand by. Here we come. All right. So you should see a spreadsheet on here. I know it's going to be small for you. If you have to, get rid of my smiling face off. Matter of fact, I'll drop my face off here for the time being. And if you're on a single screen, it gives you a little bit more room to see what's going on. All right. This is a very simple cash flow sheet that I learned how to do this, honestly, before I started my first business in 1983. My brother, who was an accountant, sat me down in front of this fancy new thing called a personal computer and opened up Lotus 123 and showed me how just to do these simple calculations so that I could write a business plan for the company that I wanted to start. So it's this is pretty simple. At the very top of the sheet, we start off with the amount of cash you have. This is the cash that you have in your bank account right now. Never mind how many places you think you've promised it, you have a balance, and that's where we need to start from. By the way, If you're one of those business owners who's got this down and cash flow is your thing and you know exactly how long, do not sign off right now. Listen to this presentation because there are people around you that need this help. You have employees that are having trouble managing their finances at home and they don't know how to do it. Everything I'm talking about right now, you can use at home. You're a freelancer, you can use this. If you're a $50, $100 million business, you can use this. Remember what the instructions on the airplane. In case the oxygen masks come down, put yours on first and then help somebody else. That applies here. This is something that you can use to help somebody else. All right. So we're going to start off putting your cash in here. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at all of our income inflows and outflows in all the different categories, and I'll go through each category. And for each week, and some people do this on a day-by-day basis, but week by week will work for most of you. As far out as you can, the spreadsheet will go out pretty darn far. It will tell us how much we spent that week, or we're planning on spending that week, which tells us how much money we have at the beginning of the next week, how much we're going to spend next week. And as you can see right now, we're looking at a sheet where their balance goes down, 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 and then it goes negative at the end of week 5, beginning of week 6. And this company is out of money. And what can we do about that? Okay, what we're trying to do is move that amount, that date, that week as far to the right as we possibly can. And you won't get it all the way because you don't have all the information that you're going to have. Every week you're going to have new information. You're going to have new sources of income. You're going to have payables that you've negotiated or settled on differently than you had before. You could update this pretty constantly and keep track of what's actually going on. All right, so receivables. You've got whatever, just list all your receivables. Each one goes on a line. Even if you think they're never going to pay you, just put it on here. We don't want to lose any information. We want to make sure that we have everything covered so that we don't get lost in that miasma of going and finding data. It's all here, just use it. So in this case, I have a client A owes us $15,000. I call that the negotiated balance because you may have talked to them and downgraded what they're going to owe you. In other words, you've made a settlement with them to get paid sooner. And that's something we absolutely need to do. I told people last week, for our industry, your receivables, the money you collect in the next 30 days is probably all you're going to get out of your current receivables. And the longer you wait, every week you wait, that the amount that you're going to get out of your receivables is going to diminish. So get that money as quickly as possible, even if you have to factor it 25% off or even 50% off, take that cash in hand. So we put that balance in there and we talked to this client and they said they can give us $10,000 this week and $5,000 that week. We put it into our spreadsheet, we go to the next one. We haven't heard back from this client. They're due this date. They've always been a good pay. Great, let's put them in there. This client, we're still negotiating. They think they're deserving a refund and this is a deposit. So we're going through the negotiation process of how much of their deposit they might get back, and maybe they even owe us more. We'll talk about deposits in just a minute. I got these people not replying. I don't think they're a good risk. I'm not putting them in my cash flow at all. I don't expect to get paid. So for each week, I now have an idea of what I might get paid that week. And if I don't, I move it forward. Okay, give them a phone call, find out what's really going on. All right. So always do put your thinking down on the notes if you have any stuff in there so that you can remind yourself about what's going on. Be realistic about the timing that you're going to receive. If you're pretty sure it's going to get there on Friday, push it to the next week so that you don't overcommit yourself. Going negative is not a good thing. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to fix all of that. And on this client right here, let's say this $22,000 bill, say they go ahead and say, well, we are not going to argue about 4,000 of it. I'm going to send you 4,000. Oh, let's put this here in week 5. So they give us $4,000. Boom. Okay, that reduces our deficit at the end of that week. Timing is going to matter on these things, and I'll show you some more examples of that in a little bit. So that gives us an idea of where our normal income is going to come from. Now let's start looking at who am I going to have to pay. We'll start with payables. Just like we did with receivables, put everybody that you owe down, even if you know that you don't need to pay them anytime soon. Put them on there. It helps to see the big picture of this thing. It's nice to know that you can negotiate and reduce this number and reduce your exposure over time. As you heard me last week, I'm very biased towards paying labor. I want to pay your employees first. I want to pay your freelancers second. I want your labor brokers to get paid third. Anything that goes directly to putting food on people's tables in a time of crisis, please, please, please pay them. Everybody else wants to get paid too, and if you're one of those people who's hoping to get paid, I hope you're magnanimous enough to realize that there are probably people who should get paid in front of you. That's just reality. That's just life. So I am biased towards paying labor. I'm biased towards paying freelancers. I'm also biased that if we've been paid by our client and somebody supported me on that project, I would like to pay them. That's not saying I won't go back and negotiate with them a little bit, or maybe ask them for terms to string it out. For instance, in this particular case, we moved it, in 2 payments to string it out a little bit, and stringing out payments helps your cash flow. All right, I'm going to show you a big example of that in just a moment. You also have some payables that are pretty low priority. Just make sure you make your notes in there so that you know that they're low priority. It's all about prioritizing. Prioritize who you're going to pay, when you're going to pay them, how much you're going to pay them. Now, moving down into overhead, where we get our whatever's left of your payroll. In this example here, let's say this company has a $24,000 monthly payroll. And what they're doing is they've entered it into their cash flow spreadsheet on the pay weeks for every month. Perfectly logical, makes perfect sense. This company has been running this way for years. They don't even stop to think about doing it any differently. But let me tell you, one of the most important things you can do in this kind of a situation is change the way that you do pay. Move your payroll to weekly. When your employees are insecure, they don't know what's going to happen to them next. If their pay has been reduced, paying every week helps alleviate a lot of the stress, but not all of the stress of that. They need to have the security of knowing that they have money in their hands. So in this particular case, we have another reason we want to move to weekly payroll. Because look at the timing of this. We run out of money in week 5 because we have a payroll free. What if we decided, why don't we just pay weekly and just plug that in there and see what happens to our cash flow? Man, pretty dang simple, but all of a sudden, I just bought one more week of survival, simply by changing the timing of when I'm paying something that I know I'm going to pay. That's the power of a simple cash flow model like this. Go back and negotiate everything. Rent. I'm asking you for 2 months deferred rent, and then I'm going to pay half rent going forward. These are the kind of deals that I'm hearing pretty regularly from folks. They're being able to renegotiate their rent to 50% and getting a little bit of a deferment. That deferment helps. If we had to pay that half rent earlier in this process, this company all of a sudden would run out of money on the same week. So again, getting that timing and get that deferment out helps push things farther down the road for you. Utilities, phone, every line item on your P&L under overhead, under expenses, you should be negotiating on or eliminating if you possibly can. Again, this is all about keeping you going for as long as possible. Now that will get us to our net cash in and cash out each week. And if we take our in this case, our $8,500 cash out, and we add that to our $39,000 that we started with, that leaves me a cash balance forward of $30,000. Now we have a couple more sections to talk about here. I want to talk about financing. You have a lot of sources of financing. Most of you have more sources of financing than you realize. Every credit card you have is a form of financing. You have credit card offers. of companies who would be more than happy to give you a credit card right now. You have credit available. You have a line of credit. You can go back to the bank and ask for a bigger line of credit. Why would they do that? Because they need you to survive. One, you're a good risk. You have assets that are unattached. Frankly, you're going to be good for it. That's what they really believe. And so it's in their best interest to loan you money to keep you going. I don't want to get into the whole idea of what's the federal subsidies that we're going to get. Nobody's read the bill that was passed last night, so I don't even want to get into that. But somewhere along the line, we're going to have some sort of federal funding that's going to come into your cash flow through whatever form, whether it's payroll matching, payroll subsidies, healthcare subsidies, or just loans. You're going to have access to something, and that's what here's where you're going to plug it in to see how it all works. So in this example here, okay. So let's say we're running out of cash here. So we know at the end of week 5, we're out of cash. We need to do something. Obviously, we can go to our line of credit. Well, there's not enough room on this line of credit to get us even, but really, how much should we borrow? If I just borrowed, $10,000, okay, that gets me in a little bit better shape. I'm sorry, if I borrow $10,000, nope, let's get this number right here. Yeah, I think I may have an error here in the calculation. My point is, if I borrow some money, that'll carry my cash farther forward. Okay, but of course now I owe some money, but that's okay. You can borrow on your line of credit and again get a deferment. The message that I would tell you is borrow enough. Don't go borrow $2,000 at a time if you have a $20,000 a month overhead. Borrow enough to get you 3 or 4 weeks down the road and give yourself that breathing room, knowing that you can probably go back and get some more. Don't sweep the entire amount over because you're going to be accruing interest on that, but put enough in your hands that you can work and get some things done without having to run back and forth online to the bank to get more cash swept over there. So there's obviously a lot of different ways you can pay certain bills. If I pay by credit card, that moves the expense down here and takes it off the top of the page, that sort of thing. And again, all we're trying to do is keep this positive so that I can stay in business, keep the doors open, keep a roof over the equipment so that we can get back to work. So some general notes about this, and then I'm going to pause and answer some questions about all of this. And then I've got some more material I want to share with you, and then we'll do even more questions. So again, don't think you can do this in QuickBooks. This honestly, without making this pretty, this literally only took me about 15 minutes to put together. Making it not super pretty, but kind of pretty, took a little bit longer. So this is not a complicated spreadsheet at all. It's very simple formulas. And in fact, I'll share it with you. You can go download it. I'll try and fix the formula here first. And then you can apply it and adapt it to whatever you need to do. You don't have to start from. So think of this as a model. You can put variations of solutions in here. You can go back and do a lot of what ifs. Very often what I'll do is I'll create multiple tabs in the spreadsheet and do different variations on it, different scenarios on it. Well, what if we did this? What if we did this? When you're thinking, well, hey, I'd like to keep, here's the crew of people I would like to keep until the fall versus a different crew that you would like to keep, you can do those modeling comparisons. Here's a bill that I would like to pay. Maybe I need to cancel this lease and give the gear back. What does that look like? Model it going forward. Same thing in your personal life. Look at the bills you can cut out. Look at just budgeting groceries differently and say, hey, instead of $250 a week in groceries, maybe I could spend $175, and look how far that gets my cash going. The important thing is that the value of the money that you save in the early weeks is compounded going forward. So the earlier you decide to save, the more valuable that money is going to be, and the harder it's going to work for you in the long run. For a lot of people I'm talking to, you're small business owners, you're probably down to less than 10 employees. If it's not just you and one other person or you by yourself, run this thing every day. Look at this all the time. Keep it moving, keep it updated. Do not let yourself have any off-book transactions. Don't leave anything in your head. Write it down here. And if you can't pay something this week, move it to next week. Don't lose it. Don't fall behind. Don't let yourself go negative without figuring out the solution for making it, getting back above zero again. And finally, if you have cash coming in, you're able to time the cash going out. Without cash coming in, there's no timing. There's nothing you can do about when cash goes out because you have nothing to send out. So do use your line of credit. Do use your credit cards. These are tools that became very important for you in keeping your business going. All right, I'm going to grab a few questions here. And I'm going to try and stick with the questions that might be relevant to this. All right, is it better to lay off or reduce salary or reduce from full-time or part-time? There's not a one answer to this question. There are some people that you need to lay off. My general, for everybody who's scheduling phone calls with me, and I'm giving 15-minute calls to people, answering their biggest questions for them, this is a common question. This cash flow spreadsheet will help you understand the right decision. If this is an employee who you're not going to have anything for them to do for the next 4 months, my recommendation is to furlough them or lay them off. If this is a person who will help you be prepared to start the company back up again, so you're moving from a thriving business because you just had the best year you've ever had and the best first quarter you've ever had, to all of a sudden you're dead in the water, you're a startup again. You know, you're not a $20 million company that doesn't have any revenue. You're now a zero revenue company that hopes to grow again. So you're only really going to keep the people that you're going to start the company back up with. So look at the volume of business that you might do in the first month, and who are you going to need to do that, and do you need them for the next 4 months? And I can't answer that for you, but this will help you understand what's the best decision for the business. I know there's a lot of sensitivity about losing employees, them going to another industry, whatever it might be. Folks, we're going to lose people. I don't want to lose you. You need to keep the business going, and that's what's important. If you've had great employees, you've taken good care of your employees, a lot of them want to come back to work for you. This business gets in our blood. We will find a way to come back to you, even if we have to leave another job to do it. So just for everybody who came on late, yes, you will get the recording of this by email tomorrow. You get a link to the webpage where you can watch this and all the other webinars in this series. Another question is, if you have cash now, does it make sense to negotiate lump sum payments for future month expenses or loans? I have a creditor I have 140K to, is willing to take 70K now. Should I take the deal? Yep, do it. Just like you should take the money from a receivable factored at 50%, because that is cash in hand. Same deal. If you can save a creditor who is going to get their money one way or the other, yeah, if they'll take 70K, give it to them. Okay. Now, there's caveats to that. If you don't have the cash now, I don't necessarily think you should go borrow against it to do that. But again, model it in the spreadsheet and see what makes the most sense. They're betting that they'd rather have 70K now than nothing later. And if you think that nothing later might be the option, then keep the 70K and hold on as long as you can. So it's a good question. There's not a black and white answer. Run the models. Look at the individual situation of what does the supplier mean to you? How do they fit into your business? Yes, you'll be able to get a copy of the spreadsheet. I'll put that on the page with the video. What about reducing employees' pays, paying 75% or 50% while they're working from home? Yeah, absolutely. The employees that you're keeping, it makes sense to reduce their pay, not just because, and don't conflate this with the fact, well, you're not really working hard, so I should pay you less. The fact is that if you reduce their pay, you can keep this going longer, and you're keeping them employed. They're keeping their benefits. They have a paycheck coming in. For most people, just having the security of knowing that they have this paycheck coming in is what they need to keep going. So Yeah, so there's nothing wrong with payroll reductions. It's not at all uncommon in these situations, and it's probably prescribed. Next question, if your spreadsheet only shows that you have enough cash for say 12 weeks, and we know that this is going to last 16 weeks before we start seeing revenue again, should we consider borrowing money or is it just time to let go? No, it's not time to let go. I've got a slide later that talks a little bit more about this. If you have enough money for 12 weeks, on week 11, borrow the money you need to make it to 16 weeks. There's no point in borrowing it earlier. But if you can line up the credit facility now, by all means, do that. Your business, if you let it go, all of your assets suddenly became worthless. If you were liquidating your company right now, you're not going to get anything of value for your equipment or anything else that you own. Your best bet is to invest into the business and keep it going. And honestly, if you're good for 12 weeks, I would double down and do everything I could to make it to 16 weeks or however long it's going to take. Trust me, it's a good investment for you. It's much better than letting the company go. Any advice about how to maintain good relationships with laid off employees? Yes, just communicate. Hopefully you did everything you could in the layoff to ease some of their pain. And especially if you're furloughing them, I would communicate with them right now every single day. Let them know what you're paying attention to. Let them know what the announcements from the federal government or the state government about subsidies and loans means to them, and that you're paying attention to those things and looking for that time when you can bring them back. Laid off employees, I would at least communicate once a week saying, here's what's going on here. We miss you. Here are the things that we're doing that will help us last longer. Here's how long we think it will last. All these bits of information are helpful to them. It may not solve their problem, but there's something about communicating that makes a huge difference to people. So if you abandon them, that's what you'll be remembered for. So by all means, communicate with them. Amazon is looking for warehouse space wherever they can find it. Pros or cons? Hey, take the cash flow. Amazon's money is good. Amazon is also hiring trucks and drivers. So by all means, do that. Can a business be financially too big to make the spreadsheet feasible? Yeah, arguably it is possible, but typically no. Receivables are pretty straightforward. It's just more lines on a spreadsheet, right? So the model is what's important. You can lump detail if you want to, if you have a lump of receivables that go into a category that are on hiatus, for instance, you can put those in one line. But again, the more transparency you have in all of this, the more levers you can move, the more detail that you can see and make decisions going forward. So, all right, that's enough of those for a while. Let me get back to our slides in some way, shape, or form. Stand by, here we go. And the downside is, okay, you have to look at me again. Sorry. All right. I'll come back to some questions that I haven't been able to answer yet, but I have more material I want to share with you, which will answer some of your questions. So who to pay? Pay little guys something and pay them first. You were a little guy once. You remember what it was like. They will be loyal to you. I have a story. A gentleman I was speaking to, a guy I've helped for years, was telling me that one of his practices is he pays his freelancers on the spot every day that they work. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, he literally goes to every job site, he writes them a check and hands them a check every day for their work that day. Holy crap, I'm going, I've never heard of such a thing. I mean, I've heard of paying day workers that way, but I've never heard of paying professional freelancers that way. But you know what? He's got some loyal people. Those are people, they're going to take his calls when business comes back. Pay the little guys something. They really do appreciate it. And the faster you and more often you pay people, the more loyalty you're going to get. You have larger payables, notify them of your plan. Always communicate. Here's what I'm going to do. Your state and federal tax payments are probably delayed. Get online, find out what's going on, what you can avoid paying for now. and then ask everybody else for 90 days grace. Even if all you want is some breathing room to figure out what to do next, just ask them for that time. We got to figure this out. When you're talking to entities like particularly government entities and insurance companies and anybody like that, always specifically say, due to the loss of income as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, or words to that effect. That allows them to do some things that they wouldn't have to do otherwise. They might try and steer you to that to get you to say that, but if you will say something to that effect, then there's more things that they can typically do for you. If you have to cancel something that you've reserved, use those words, and the chances are it's easier for the person at the other end of the phone to help you in the way that you want to be helped. Don't be embarrassed. Use the freaking words so that they can do what they are able to do for you. Now, who pays you? As I said before, collect anything you can now. Anything you can collect it, even if you negotiate it down to 50%. That cash is going to extend your calendar. And do not get wadded up on the fact that that $22,000 receivable only had 30% gross profit. And if you take less than $17,000, you're going to lose money. That's not how it works. That money's gone. It's $17,000 you didn't have. The profitability of the job has nothing to do with it. This is about cash flow. Get that whole idea of P&L out of your head. All we care about is cash, 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 cash. Get the cash in the hand, spend as little cash as you can, keep things going 1 week longer. That's what really matters. You're going to have to negotiate harder than you used to. Everybody who owes you money or that you owe money to is going to be digging in a little bit harder. They're going to be going, they're not going to be as magnanimous as they may have been in the past. They're not going to be as easy to get to a deal with as they are in the past. Be ready to push a little bit harder and let them know what you're doing with the money. We're helping workers stay afloat. We're keeping our health care intact. Whatever it is that you need to say to help get you to that deal that you need. Yeah, if you do any kind of credit options, get a line of credit, whatever, get those 90 days grace at the front end so you don't have to start making payments. Make sure you're explicit in that. Make sure that's in the agreement. If you got credit cards with a low interest and a grace period, you might want to grab them. They'll come in real handy. You don't have to use them, but it's nice to have them there, isn't it? Who knows? You may get a gig and all of a sudden you need some money to bring in vendors who don't want to give you any credit right now. They want cash, and they'll do a great deal for cash, and you're going to be the person who has it. Get creative. Barter. You know, think about a model where Tina owes Mary, who owes Jake, who owes Eleanor, who owes Bob. And all they're doing is moving the same, if each of them owes the other $100, they're moving the same $100 around. Talk to your network, find out who owes who and where you can barter something. You know, Bob also owes Mary and Tina owes Mary. Maybe there's stuff that you can trade and barter for all of this. So it's time to be creative. Trading equipment for 50 cents on the dollar or even 25 cents on the dollar is better than giving up cash. So think about it. Be creative. General recommendations. Owners, resist the urge to cut everything. The no revenue does not equal do nothing. I've had a couple of folks, and some that I'm still working on, trying to get them to realize, don't fire everybody, don't lay everybody off and turn the lights out and just wait. You still have a business to run, and there's going to be a big difference between the people who are working during this down period and paying attention to their business and figuring out how they're going to start up coming forward, how they're going to market their business, how they're going to simplify their business model, what is their strategy for quickly growing again, versus the people who just wait and think that they just turn the lights back on and it'll be business as normal. You know, don't be that guy. Stay in the game, keep doing this. That's why there's 7 more weeks of these webinars, because there's so much stuff to talk about that you can be doing to help your business right now. Freelancers. I was a freelancer for a long time, and I've managed a lot of freelancers as a buyer. Remind folks of all the things that you know how to do and what you were willing to do. Okay? It's okay to say, hey, you know what? when I was a freelancer, I mean, I've had a lot of interesting jobs and careers, you know, but I was a carpenter. I did apartment maintenance. You know, there's lots of things that they probably didn't know I could do that might help them, and they'd rather give me the little bit of work they have than somebody else. So let people know what you do, and the hidden skills and talents that you have. And then in your personal life, it's difficult. It's really hard to go home and say, you know, to your partner that, you know, hey, I just had a 50% pay cut, and there's nothing I can do about it, and try and live the same life that you've always lived. Okay? There's a lot of doing without, and it happens everywhere. So figure out, reconcile yourself. Remember the acceptance phase of grief. Get to the point where you accept this, and now here are the things that I'm going to do about this to make sure that I survive. So put the important things first, figure out your cash flow, and let's get to work on the things that you need to be doing to keep the groceries on the table and keep yourselves healthy. And yeah, a lot of bartering going on in the personal world if you want to preserve some cash. Deposits. More and more of the calls I'm having lately start with a discussion about a specific job where the caller is holding a deposit, it's holding the client's money for a job that's been canceled. And of course, the client wants 100% back because the job was canceled, even though it's only 4 weeks away. And your terms and conditions simply said 50% deposit. And it wasn't based on any kind of work in progress. There were no lines in there to say about how to deal with this. We're going to fix that going forward. You know, we as an industry, we're going to figure this out and do it correctly. That's probably 4 weeks from now, maybe 3 weeks from now. About in this particular situation, show them the work that's done. Here's the work that we've done. Here are the drawings we completed. Here's the project management hours that have been done. Here's the cost. You know, we spent this many hours booking all these subcontractors, and then we spent this many hours unbooking them. And then here's the non-refundable deposits that we owe those contractors. Put something onto all of that. Put a non-refundable project holdback, a reservation fee, 10% of the job. Trust me, that's just for negotiating purposes, but put it in there so you have something to take out. And then that leaves a balance. So if they gave you X amount of dollars, you show all the work that you've done, you show them the holdback, there's a little puddle of money left over. Make an offer on what to do with that. Okay. My standard offer would be something along the lines is, you know, I want to apply 100% of this to the next job. We will take the work that we've already done. You don't have to pay for it again. And that's, as soon as you schedule a new date, we can move this forward. When they push back and say, no, I need you to pay me back, I say, well, what I can do is I can pay you back 50% of it now, and we'll call it even, or I can pay you back all of it in 6 months when business starts up again. They go, well, I want it now. I said, I don't have it. Okay? Your deposit went into running the business, working on the job that you're going forward. That's what happens. It made payroll, it paid for health care. You know, it's in the use. It's running my business, right? So it's not available. I have nothing to give you. I can give you $3,000 now. I can give you $6,000 in 6 months. I told you you'd have to negotiate hard. Okay? Be prepared for harder negotiations. On deferments, remember, these just give you room to work. Get to work on it. If you haven't been doing this already, get every deferment that you can possibly get. That's cash that you get to hold on to that will keep you going. And even if you get a 90-day deferment, do not be afraid to go back in 80 days and ask for another 90 days because you're probably going to need it. But right now, 90 days is what you can ask for, and the rest of the world understands that. Our industry, remember, we're 3 weeks ahead of this. We're 3 weeks ahead of everybody else in terms of what's happened to our businesses and how much of our business has gone away. So we know that 90 days may not cut it, but they're living in a world where, oh, a month deferment is probably all we need because we're going to be at home for 2 or 3 weeks. they don't get it. They haven't seen what we've seen. So don't be afraid to go back and ask later. Get the deferment you need now. You can go back and ask for more later. All right. So what's next? Thanks for keeping the questions here. I see a bunch of stuff on the chats. I will try and scan the chats, but I can't get into there right now. So what's next? Here are some questions that I've been asking. I'm still getting lots of phone calls. I'm happy to keep taking them. Please keep scheduling them. I'll give you a link at the end of the presentation so you can book some time with me and make sure that you understand the things that you urgently need to do now and get you guys moving down the road a little bit. A question that's come up too many times recently for me to not answer is, will I need to declare bankruptcy? No, probably not. Actually, it's really hard to bankrupt a company in our industry because people will give you credit long after you're not credit worthy. Bankruptcy does not fix your creditors' problems, particularly in our balance sheet industries, because so much of our credit is against equipment. They don't want the gear back. They don't know what to do with it. The leasing company has no use for your 8 camera chains. So they don't want that stuff back. They're going to give you a deferment as long as they can. And if you will give them anything, they can keep that debt in the viable assets on their balance sheet. And they're happy with that. They're not ecstatic, but it's better off than saying, these guys are bankrupt, I'm not going to collect anything. Or I'm going to have to pay a bunch of lawyers so I can get 10 cents on the dollar. So you're better left on their books as a sketchy asset, but communicate with them, stay in touch, and if you have to, write them a little check every once in a while. There's a ton of things you can do before you even need to have a conversation about bankruptcy. So I just want you to take it off the plate. It's not what you should be thinking about right now. You have assets that you can isolate, your leased gear, in case you do need to sell it or barter it or give it back to a creditor. You've got all these negotiable settlements on payables and receivables you need to be working on. You've got lower rent you need to be working on. You may be keeping more employees than you need to for the time duration that you're looking at in your cash flow. You're not done. And if you chuck it all in, you've got nothing, right? Your liquidation at the worst possible time to liquidate. Think of what you're doing as making an investment in the future. And if you're afraid of getting a loan, which is usually what happens next, is I don't want to get a loan because I don't know what my business is going to do, you're thinking about it the wrong way. Right now, your business doesn't look like it's worth a whole lot. And to be honest, it really isn't, because we don't have any future revenue, but we know we will again in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it might be. If you have no loan, the money runs out, you'll eventually go bankrupt or liquidate. However, you have assets that are worth something. They have value. If I went out and got a $100,000 loan right now to help keep my business afloat until there's revenue again, I just bought all of those assets for $100,000. Just think of it as an investment. Okay? You're investing in the future of your business, but it's you investing it and not somebody from the outside or selling your business. So today you don't have a lot of business, but one day you will. A loan is an investment in a viable business that has assets, reputation, intellect that will be in demand in the near future. You are a startup that's already done all the hard work. All you need now is revenue. Invest in that business because that's the business that's going to succeed. So loans right now are your friend. I know for many of you, your entire career has been avoiding loans, okay, trying not to be in debt. Now's not the time to keep that mindset. Now is the time to say, if I need to go in debt to keep my company going, I'm just going to make sure that I'm only spending on money on things that are mission critical for my business. I had a lot of text messages today about how the bailout will help me. I don't know. I don't think anybody knows yet. We will be learning more every day about what the government bailout, the federal bailout will do for you. You also have some state funds that might be available. Get into the community, go to AV Matters Facebook group, share it with folks if you learn something and how to apply it. Work with your payroll company. Are going to be paying a lot of attention to anything that affects payroll. If there's any kind of government programs to subsidize or make your payroll for any amount of time, furloughed employees might be eligible for getting a paycheck. That might be better than unemployment. So wait, you'll find out about all of this. I won't be the best source of that information, but you have this cash flow model that shows you how to apply that. So these things, as they evolve, should help you keep your company going longer. Another reason why don't even think about bankruptcy yet. We don't know all the resources that are coming your way. Because remember, we're weeks ahead of the rest of the economy in terms of need. So we're just now figuring out what the government's going to be able to do to help us out. I've had a lot of questions about asking what's going to happen to pricing. And there was one last week, a freelancer saying, am I going to need to drop my rate when I go back to work? All right, here's the answer, folks. Yeah, probably. This is supply and demand. Okay, we're going to have a huge amount of supply, very little demand. Prices are going to drop. Okay? Now, how you present your pricing and how you present a deal to the customer is strategic. So in the future webinars, we'll talk more about how to better position yourself to come in at a market rate that will get you the job, but not lock you into that rate forever. Okay. So strategy and marketing are still going to matter in all of this, especially coming right out of this recessive period. And what's our supply chain going to look like in 6 months? Are my suppliers going to be there? Am I going to have freelancers? Something of this magnitude, none of us actually have experience in. The closest thing we have to this is post 9/11. 1987 was a little bit like this. Staffing is always going to come back. All of your businesses, as soon as you start back up, you're going to be okay for a little bit, but pretty soon you're going to need help. So anybody who's in the staffing business or freelancers, they're the first ones that are going to actually have work coming back out of this. Affordable subrentals are going to be in demand. The companies that recognize that the market rate has changed, what they want to do is gain market share. Those come online next. People start buying supplies right after that. Capital spending, it's going to be postponed for a while. It's going to be, you may have some great deals available to you if you are in a good cash position to get in some equipment that you might need. But typically, if you're a manufacturer, we know that our capital spending is going to go twice as long as the downturn. So if we have, for every quarter we have in this downturn, we need 2 quarters to recover. For every 2 quarters, we need 3. So it could be, if we're down for 3 quarters, it could be a year and a half before these companies start to see significant CapEx again. But doesn't matter right now. Right now, deal with your short-term cash flow. What else will change? We'll talk about more of these in the weeks to come. Your terms and conditions are going to change. There's going to be less credit extended for things that are intangible. Getting credit for things that are products is going to be a lot easier. However, the value of your smarts and your intellect is going to go up in this new economy. Outsourcing is going to go up. When you guys come back, your models have to be more scalable. One of the reasons so many of you are taking this so hard right now is that you are overstaffed. We need to learn how to run our businesses with less staff and use more freelancers and more outsourced businesses to make your business more scalable so that you're profitable more months out of the year instead of just the 4 or 5 that many of you are. So we're going to work on fixing all of those things so that we come back as healthier versions of ourselves. This whole idea of the deposits that we're getting from customers for projects has got to change. These are now work in progress payments or a pay-as-you-go model. We just document it a little bit differently. We ask for it differently, but this is very valuable money, and the customers are happy to pay. They're actually happier to pay that than they are deposits, which everyone's going to be leery of after what we're going through right now. And of course, a lot of good people are going to leave the industry, and I'm sorry, but more are going to stay. This is my probably the 3rd, 4th major downturn. I'm still here. A lot of us are still going to be here. All right. I know this is only scheduled for an hour. I will do Q&A for another half an hour until my voice gives out. And I see a lot of questions here. A couple of quick announcements. This won't take long. If you've registered for this call, not only will you get an email that tells you how to get to the page that'll have all the archived videos and any extra things, resources that we're sharing, you are registered for the next 7 events. So hopefully you clicked on the link to put it on your calendar. It's all there. Next week, I don't know what next week's focus is going to be. I'm paying close attention to the things that you are asking about to see what it is that we need to talk about next week. I worked on today's presentation pretty much until we started. Things are still changing pretty dramatically, but I want to make sure that I'm hitting on the things that are important for you to hear. Again, for those of you who missed it last week, the Jumpstart workshops are on hold for 2020. I'm working on an online delivery system when the time is right. Right now, we've got other stuff to do, and you don't need to be spending money on that stuff. I'll tell you more about that when we know some more. Let me help. You can grab your phone, hit the QR code. That'll let you schedule a call with me. There's a 15-minute calls on open spots in my calendar. If you don't see a slot tomorrow, there may be one on Friday. There's certainly some next week. Get on my schedule. Let's make sure you're doing the right stuff. Get your questions answered, particularly if it's not the kind of question that you can ask in a public forum. So I'm very pleased I'm humbled that so many of you would reach out to me and think my thoughts and advice are valuable, but please continue to do that, and we'll get you guys moving. And one final thought before some questions here. Your job right now, whether in your personal life or your business life, is to reduce your fear of the unknown by making as many things crystal clear as possible. The biggest benefit of that cash flow spreadsheet is everything's there. There's nothing hidden. There's no surprises. And if you find a surprise, you put it on the sheet where you can control it. Find the way to reduce the fear by shining the light on the things that you need to shine the light on so that you can make the decisions that you need to make, and take care of yourself. Get some sleep. It'll be here tomorrow, but do everything that you can. All right. Don't forget to register. If you register for this week or registered for that week, next week, ignore that comment. All right, Q&A. Let's see. I'm looking for questions. There's some comments in here. What do you sell when no one is buying AV gear? Trucks maybe, then rent trucks when it picks up. Sure. There's some great hero stories on social media now about organizations that are able to use some of the things that they do. One of them was Upstaging, which is a big touring company. And I watched a news piece on them and how they have a manufacturing group that does stuff, fabrication for tours, and they're making face masks for medical workers. The face shield type stuff. They're also adapting their temporary power systems for medical use because there's a lot of temporary hospitals and stuff going up. So you can be creative and find places that you can do that stuff, but also don't overlook the things that you can do that would simply be magnanimous. Supporting charities, going out and doing stuff for charities that would help them, making deliveries for charities if you've got trucks and a person that you can lend to them. Question, every AV company is now marketing some type of virtual meeting package. Yes, they are. That seems like first level thinking. What do you suggest as a second level thinking from a marketing standpoint? Well, all right. First level thinking is free. Second level thinking is a more difficult question. Look at your business strategy and see where you fit in. For me, a second level thinking strategy is doing stuff for the community, finding ways to give back to help the community. Right now, trying to sell anything to a marketplace that's stressed and kind of freaked out doesn't seem like a great idea. I kind of cringe when I see the streaming meeting and virtual meeting marketing. It's necessary. If I were in your shoes, I would probably do it too, but it's also a little cringeworthy given what we're dealing with right now. So find a way to be more magnanimous. Do something for the community right now. The time to market a service is coming. unless you have something that you know that will specifically help something. If you have warehouse space that you can rent to Amazon, which was the example that we had earlier. So do something strategic, and then when you come back, what's that third level thinking that maybe there's a different way of doing business that no one else has thought of yet. Maybe we shouldn't meet in hotels anymore. Maybe every meeting should be virtual when you build a studio. That's strategy. Let's figure that out as we get down the road here. All right. I have a lender that are not answering the phone and do not provide an online option to negotiate. What to do? Great question. Send them a letter with a stamp on it. If it's a big deal, certify it. Communicate with them. The fact that they don't want to communicate means that they're trying not to get into a position where they have to give anything up. Send them a letter and say, hey, I'm not able to get in contact with you. Here's what we're going to do. We're not going to pay you for 90 days. We expect you to accommodate that in this current climate. And we expect to start paying you on these dates. Please reply, or I will assume that you're okay with this. Words to that effect. Do complete your end of the deal, even if you have to do it with snail mail. All right. Yeah, in New Jersey laws, we have to pay sick leave and family leave benefits first. Are you familiar with this? And do we have to follow this, or are they going to waive this? No, I think if you lay people off, they've earned their sick leave, their PTO days. That's part of getting laid off. You have to write them that settlement check. Another reason why we often furlough people, because they can use those benefits. They can maybe use their PTO days in lieu of not getting a paycheck. But you still have that obligation. That's money that they've earned. You're going to have to give it to them. I don't think there's any waiver on that. We're not going to waive things where, the people who are putting groceries on the table or getting their kids to the doctor are the ones who don't get paid. So yes, you're probably obligated for that in whatever state you're in. I will say all that. I'm not a human resources professional. I'm not an attorney, and I'm not a tax advisor. I'm just a business guy who works with companies all over the US and Canada and overseas. Another question here. How can I negotiate with a client that wants to go line by line through an event budget to determine that we may or may not have done? We're offering 75% of the total because we are 1 week from load in. Good. Technically, you should be able to ask for 100%, but we want to do the right thing. They want to get down to 50%. So group the line items. So if they want to go line item by line item, negotiate what's actually done. Do what I said earlier about dealing with a deposit. All the things that are complete and that would be complete a week out, mark those as complete. That's 100%. Okay, so you get that lump sum of money. Negotiate the things that are incomplete. Everything else is complete. You know what's complete. Your suppliers, who are often a line item or maybe 20 items, take these 20 line items. Here is the supplier. This is complete. Okay, here's what we owe that supplier. So get it into bigger buckets, but make sure that you're the one bringing the documentation. Say, here's what we're negotiating. What I'm willing to negotiate is the fact that you owe us for 100%, and I'm willing to take 75. So yes, people are going to try and string it out. Remember, people are going to negotiate much, much harder than they normally do, but make as many things non-negotiable. And when they go there, say, look, what part of this do you think is negotiable? This work is done. Okay? I've had to pay these people. I owe these people money. So make it non-negotiable. It's not going to be easy. And maybe they want to get it down to 50%. Maybe you get it down to 70% or 65%. Keep fighting. You're doing the right thing. Another question. We are coming up on renewing our building lease. Any thoughts on how to renegotiate considering the circumstances we're all going through? Yeah, I would say probably if I were your building owner, I would probably, as much as I'd like to get you on a renewed lease, I might want to put it on, a sliding scale where it's, 50% of the rent for the next 6 months, get you up to the regular rent. I might just put you on month to month for a certain period. So just be flexible about that and have some good options, but this won't be forever. And they don't want to lock into a 50% rental rate in every market that they're in, but your market, maybe they need to. So definitely negotiate, and you'll have more time to negotiate harder than you've ever negotiated for a lease. Still wanting to get an idea of how we should be market ourselves on websites, social media. Is it still business as usual? Should we be more informative about the situation and other things to consider? It seems awkward pushing business during this time. Yes, it is. I would not be pushing business at this time. I would be helping them understand, helping your audience understand what you're doing to take care of your employees, what you're taking care of your families, taking care of your suppliers, how you're thinking about ways to help your clients strategically communicate their messages in the future when it's time to communicate messages again. Yes, of course, you've got streaming and you've got a studio and you want to talk about that. I would, that's the button that you can click on if you're ready and give them information about how to do that. But right now, I think it's mostly about showing that you're being a good citizen and you're doing everything you can so that we can all stay home, quarantine, social distancing, and all that stuff that's going to help stem the tide of this pandemic, that we're not contributing to the things that are going to make other people's lives more difficult. There'll be time to send other messages out. I don't know exactly when that is. So we'll figure that out, right, in the weeks to come. And trust me, if you're here with me and I say, no, it's time to start talking, you'll all know at the same time. Another question, how would you suggest we handle obtaining deposits with long-term clients who we did not require deposits from in the past once the work starts up again? Yeah, it's new world order. We'll talk more about that going forward, but when we come out of this, obviously, one, we're going to celebrate like hell. I can't wait for you to load the first truck. But when we start talking to clients and saying, again, we won't be asking for deposits. We're going to be asking for work in progress. Okay, so we're going to design the show. We're going to get paid for the design. Great. We're going to reserve the gear. Here's the fee to reserve the gear. We're going to hire the project manager. Here's the fee to hire the project manager. Okay, it's not, there is a big project in here, but there are progress payments or work in progress payments, which is really how most of the rest of the world does things. We're just a little weird, right? So your clients will not be unfamiliar with this. They may be surprised to see you do it, but they'll only be surprised for a moment and they'll realize, well, of course you would do that. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, of course, that's how we should do that. So I think it's going to come a lot more easily than many of us expect it to. Can you elaborate more about deposit usage terms and conditions? I will in future webinars. I think I've covered it quite a bit since you wrote that question. On a more personal level, should I be concerned about credit reduction if I ask for a deferment? In other words, I have a credit card with the same bank as a mortgage. I don't know what the government's going to do to protect your credit status. Right now, shouldn't be your biggest concern. Typically, they're not going to downgrade your credit unless you're delinquent. Asking for a deferment is not the same as being delinquent. You're not paying them with their permission. That's what a deferment means. So all the things I'm suggesting here are not renege, don't pay people. It's not go into the bad place. It's simply letting them know, hey, I need some grace on this. How much grace can you give me? I'd like to have 90 days. In which case, it shouldn't affect your credit records. If not, you can always contest it and say, hey, they gave me permission to do this. Let's see. All right. So this question, all of my receivables are schools and libraries, and they're all closed. They're good for the money. It's not going to be coming in soon. I already have lots of outstanding debt, but probably have additional money I can borrow. All stuff is like blah, 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 blah. Should I borrow more? You only need to borrow to keep your cash flow positive. The fact that you have people who owe you money that are going to pay you down the road actually helps you out. So you only have to borrow a little bit to get you to that point. Hopefully all of your deferments and everything will help you get there without additional loans. But if you do need to get a loan to get you to that spot, obviously, why wouldn't you do that? It's a good investment, and you'll probably be in a position to pay it back sooner than other folks will. Thank you for the question. How do we decide what projects are essential and safe enough for our techs? Guidelines are not clear for this in this industry. Want to support clients, yet keep the guys safe as possible. Look at the highest common denominator on guidelines. The states that have done quarantines are good places like California, Ohio. Talk about that 6 feet. If you can have people working 6 feet apart and not in a closet, you can't put 3 guys in a closet and do an install. That's problematic. Do they have the protective gear that they need? Do they have the sanitizer that they need to work in that space? Just make sure all of those precautions are taken, but then it's still a judgment call. The employee ultimately has the decision about whether or not they feel comfortable working in that environment. So how does one get a loan without revenue? Is it only against the gear? Not necessarily. If you're a service business, now chances are you're probably going to get a credit card, which is much easier to get. But if you have history with the bank and you should have average balances that are typically good, banks will give you a line of credit. I for years had a signature line of credit with my old bank. Banks will do a line of credit against the equity in your house. It's not the same as an equity loan, but they're just using the leftover equity in your house to go against the line of credit. There's lots of things that you could do. You'd be surprised. Go have the conversation. Could you include any tips for AV integrators next week? If you ask AV integrator questions, I probably can answer them. A lot of my clients are integrators. My primary audience are live events folks, so I tend to skew that way a little bit. However, there's really nothing I'm talking about that isn't exactly the same in every industry. I consult with a lot of folks, often just on a social basis as a favor. I support a karate studio. I have conversations with the owner of the karate studio all the time. I'm telling him the exact same stuff I'm telling you guys. It's all the same. The language and examples I use are probably going to be more live event oriented, but ask me an integration question. I'm happy to answer it. I have a lot of experience in that space. You think we're going to see an increase in mergers and acquisitions? I have no idea. It's too early to ask. This may help some employers know what they should be able to do in time of uncertainty. Well, I hope so. Thank you for that comment. I hope this helps you know what to do. Next session topic, we'd love to hear your thoughts on pivoting into virtual in the next session. Maybe, guys, I think it's too early, but we will be talking about that pretty soon. Let's see, I will send an email with all the information that I have for 7A and SBA EDI loans. Thank you for that. This is one of my favorite people. She's very helpful with resources, and I will pass that on to you guys. So, guys, if you send me stuff that I think other people can use, I'm happy to pass it on. And I will probably put it just on the landing page for the replay for this webinar. How is it possible to get this down to 0 when they are more expensive that outweigh money, including accounts payable, accounts receivable? Look, most of you are not going to do this without some sort of credit facility. You're going to have to borrow money, whether it's from your rich uncle or credit cards, bank line of credit, that equipment you paid cash for last year, go back and put it on a lease. There's lots of things that you have. If you have 0 income and you have expenses and you're out of cash, your only other option is to borrow. Now, you may find somebody who will invest in your business. You're not going to get a very good terms on an investment in your business right now. So don't be afraid to borrow. Don't be afraid to look at all the options for borrowing. Go talk to your banker. You'd be surprised what they can do. How do you recommend a work in progress model for a rock and roll event? We usually ask for 50% to reserve, 50% of delivery, ensures that we get paid when the promoter is depending on ticket and concession sales to pay the rest of the vendors. Yeah, you simply have to reframe what it is and what's refundable and what's not refundable. So, I might charge them 10% to reserve, that's non-refundable, okay? Then I'm gonna charge them another 25% of the job to do all the front end work, to go through all the riders, do all the conversations with the acts, all those kinds of things, put it into different buckets based on the timeline of the job. There's lots of work in progress for the 4 or 6 weeks up to a festival or a concert. There's things that you have to do. Just separate those into payables. And there's nothing wrong in rock and roll and getting paid the balance before you load in. So that last payment is to open the door on the back of the of the trailer. So and then we'll go ahead and load in the show. So work in progress will work for just about anything that you do. You just have to think differently about it. And it's a number. I need $25,000 for pre-pro. I need $5,000 for this, rather than 50% and 50%. Do you think SBA loans will run out? I have no earthly idea. Remember, the SBA is not making the loan. They're only guaranteeing the loan. It's coming from banks, and banks have tons of money. They're sitting on quite a bit of cash still. Well, here's a question from somebody who I thought was retired. Good to hear from you. While the AV industry was amongst the first to suffer and see cancellations, do you expect our industry to be slower to recover than other sectors of the economy? It depends on what part of the live events business that you're actually in. What we saw after 9/11 is what came back first was entertainment. We wanted things to celebrate, so governments, in particular municipalities, were saying, hey, they were talking to promoters to make sure that the touring acts came back to their city first, that they put a festival that was postponed over the summer and they put it in the fall. So if you're in that sector, you'll see that business come back more quickly. The general business meetings, I think, typically will come next, because we're going to have business meetings. The big, flashy, high-dollar entertainment meetings with creative and fabrication and all that kind of stuff, well, we all know the lead times on those things are 6 months, and those corporations are going to think long and hard about freeing up that cash to do that. They have to come up with new marketing plans after a deep recession to figure out how to come back, and so those will take a little bit longer. So my best advice to all of you is be a little open-minded, diversify your business a little bit. You may have to do what I affectionately call meatball AV until you can do the big fancy corporate gigs that you're used to doing. You might have to do some concert work because you're the right company to do that. It just depends on what business you're in and what your capabilities are. So there's a question here about the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. I can't answer these questions. I honestly don't know. A lot of this stuff is very, very new, and I will defer to HR professionals to answer those kinds of questions. Are the companies you talk to covering all of the employees' insurance regardless of the level of pay cut? Yeah, so regardless of the level of pay cut, whatever the employer was paying on their insurance, they're typically continuing to pay. Some are even going one step further and paying the employee's share of it. But that's really up to you. What you contribute to the healthcare is certainly up to you, and I encourage you to do whatever you can to help people with that. But regardless of what their pay cut level is, there are things that you can do for employees who have had to take deep pay cuts in terms of flexibility about their time during your airplane mode. So think about that. I'm sure people will share more ideas going forward, but you don't need all of your 7 executives that are on half pay don't all need to be on call to do very little business all at the same time. You can stagger this out. You can give them weeks off and stuff during this period where they can spend more time locked in their house with their families. A couple more questions here. We're about to run out of time. How should we amend terms and conditions for current business to protect our COVID-19 work slowdown or stoppage? That's a good question. I will try and address that when we get to that webinar. Um, I think right now the important thing is if you have contracts that are current contracts for future work, even if it's next November or next year, you should be having conversations with those clients now and keep their temperature in mind, ask them what changes they're expecting to make to their event, that sort of thing. When there's a substantive change to the event, that's the opportunity to introduce a new term and condition. And I don't think it's going to be difficult to go back and say, hey, based on the circumstances, we'd like to amend our terms and conditions to do this, and here's why it's going to work in your favor, but also here's how it's going to help us. And I think you'll have a better response that way. And all right, one more question, and I love this question. The next several months, should we be focused on cost reduction or focused on income alternatives? What can we do? How can we reinvent our business? Okay. It's not either or. This week, focus on cost reduction. Focus on getting your cash flow organized. That's this week's focus. May take you into next week. If you have obvious income alternatives, there's no reason you can't be doing the same thing at the same time. But if you're going to have to develop income alternatives, let's get this stuff. Remember, get your mask on first and then do the next thing. You'll be able to work on income alternatives next week or the week after. Do things in the right order, but right now cash flow is the most important thing, which is why I made this webinar so much about cash flow. That's the thing we've got to get our head around, because that's our tool, that's our fuel for everything that happens afterwards. So, all right, I know there are more questions and I'd love to answer more, but I'm running out of voice. I keep having to wipe my nose here because I've got allergies, because it's Texas. We have four allergy seasons in Texas. They're called winter, spring, summer, and fall. Other than that, I'm feeling just fine. So thank you guys for being with us. Thank you for all the lovely comments. I appreciate you. I'm thinking about you. I want to keep you all around. I love this industry. I love you guys. So let's keep doing the things that we need to do so that we can get through this, and share it with your friends. So take care of yourselves. Stay healthy. Stay home. Wash your freaking hands. We'll talk to you next week.